now
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's a great Monday morning in Washington, D.C. and the greater environs, but really it's across the nation right now because we're America's morning show. It's O'Connor and Company. Larry O'Connor with Julie Godlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
It was a great weekend, and we are all fired up and caffeinated, ready to go. It's 6:35, 30 minutes from now. Phil Wegmann, he's the White House reporter for Real Clear Politics. We'll talk to him about the, big debate this Wednesday, latest in the 2024 race, as well as the coverage of President Biden going to Maui today. By the way, speaking of that debate, you can hear it live here starting at 9 p.m.
Yes.
Wednesday night, right after the great one. And turns out I'm going to be in Milwaukee.
This is so exciting.
Heading out there Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to be covering the debate for WMAL and various outlets that I am with. And then I'll be there Thursday morning. We'll be reporting live from Milwaukee in the aftermath of the debate with Governor Walker. Sean Spicer will be joining us there.
Man, that's great, Larry.
And some other people. So we're looking forward to that for sure. 7:05 Joe DeGeneva and 7:35 Trent Talbot, CEO of Brave Books. All right. Let's keep plowing ahead here with, again, this busy day. And not only are we covering natural disasters like that, we assume it's a natural disaster, the Maui fires, but still investigating.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have a hurricane. It's hurricane season, and we're used to tracking these hurricanes in the Caribbean, hitting some islands, maybe hitting Florida, maybe hitting,
this
Georgia,
area.
And eventually coming up here. Very rare, but it happened. We had a hurricane hitting Baja California from Cabo all the way up to, and to California. Baja California is Lower California.
Yeah.
California is California. That would be the United States. And Southern California got hit by a hurricane.
So weird.
Hurricane Hilary.
Perfect.
Yeah. Just going to let that sit there for a minute. Hurricane Hilary wreaked her wrath against Southern California, and it looks like she was carrying a whole lot of water. The flooding is pretty awful. When you look at Baja California, whose Mexican infrastructure isn't really set up for this sort of thing. For people who don't know, because you think Mexico, on this side of the country, on the eastern side, what we're used to seeing down in Cozumel and Cancun and Acapulco and the the Gulf of Mexico, part of Mexico, it's very tropical. Mm-hmm. Not so much over there. Baja California it's a very desert-like terrain. They do get some rain. Yeah. But it's just like the state of California. It continues. If you go to Cabo San Lucas, it's cactus. It's dunes.
Right.
Their infrastructure is not set up for this kind of precipitation. The drainage, it's already, Mexico. So the sidewalks and pavement and sewage system is not necessarily up to snuff already. But then when you just hit it with a deluge like this, the scenes from Baja California are remarkable right now. Streets are rivers at this point.
People have been climbing trees to avoid some of the flooding. I mean, it is dystopian.
And I'm avoiding saying that Mexico is a third world nation and set up so only because you're seeing the same thing in California, Los Angeles, and thereabouts, from basically the Santa Barbara area all the way down to San Diego. You're seeing certain street systems, certain pieces of pavement in some of those areas also crumbling. So welcome to the third world nation of Los Angeles County. And then in the middle of all of this, they got a 5.1 earthquake centered in Ojai, California, which is really just north of Los Angeles and Malibu, south of Santa Barbara. And my daughter, my 24-year-old, was moving into her new apartment yesterday during all of this.
No.
She called me when the rains were coming and is like, well, here we're in the eye of a hurricane right now. And she started singing the song from Hamilton, of course, Eye of the Hurricane. And because she's a theater girl.
Your daughter.
And so am I, kind of.
Yes, yeah.
And so she's doing her move-in and everything. I say, you okay? Yeah, we got to figure it out. We're okay. We can park in the garage, and we're just getting all the boxes up and everything. And then I see reports of a 5.1 earthquake, and I called her, and it was just nothing but expletives. Just a string of four-letter words.
California.
It's like, really? We're getting all of this?
It's time to move.
The shots of L.A., there's an overhead shot, it's remarkable, of Dodger Stadium. Yeah. So Dodger Stadium is built on, they call it Chavez Ravine, right? It's actually just, it's sort of like on a little bit of a hillside above downtown Los Angeles. Got beautiful views of the whole L.A. basin and everything, but it's elevated, right? Mm-hmm. But they created the area where the baseball stadium is. They just plowed through, and they was back in the 50s. They could do whatever they wanted. They wanted a baseball team, right? No environmental impact.
Right.
They clearly didn't plan on any sort of, hurricane hitting over the last 70 years, because the entire parking lot surrounding the baseball stadium is a lake right now.
Yeah, I saw it, and all I could think of was Katrina. Remember?
Yeah, those shots of the parking lots of the Superdome, or not, wasn't the Superdome, was another arena, I think, downtown closer to the levees. But
everyone knows what you're talking about.
The parking lots are all lakes right now in Los Angeles. Record, and by the way, here's the other thing about Southern California: they've already had record rain this year.
Yeah,
And I kid you, the rain has been remarkable. Every time I have visited, because people know, I think, that I go back at least once a month. I go to visit my kids in Southern California for a weekend, and it rains. Every time I'm out there, it's like, I want to go to the beach with my kids. We want to go hiking. And raining. Every time I've been there this year.
So the ground is saturated.
It's already saturated. It's already very...
Yeah.
But here's the best part. I guarantee you, under the fine stewardship of Gavin Newsom. Remember when, for the past 7 years, they've been screaming about their drought?
Yes.
And about how there's no rainfall, and that's why they have all these horrible fires, because it's so dry and there's no water, and they have to divert it from Nevada and from Arizona, from the Colorado River for all of their water needs and the valley and everything. They could have been building reservoirs this whole time. They could have been coming up. They know, because this is cyclical. It's always been cyclical. It's either a drought in Southern California or it's a deluge in Southern California. And they are they have too much water right now. And I guarantee you, a year from now, they'll be whining and crying about a drought again.
Yes.
And meanwhile, they could have captured all this water.
Yes. Well, and don't forget, most of this is because of climate change. Looking at a headline in the LA Times yesterday, what climate factors made Hurricane Hilary possible, right? This is what you're going to get. You're going to get this from these city officials who didn't prepare ahead of time. I mean, you have people in LA climbing trees to avoid the flooding. Surely there should be better resources on the ground in LA and around Southern California to deal with this. But they don't, and ultimately, they're going to say, well, we can't prepare for this because this is climate change. Right. Same thing that we're seeing in Maui. This is always how they excuse bad behavior and bad prep.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, I don't think a hurricane has hit Southern California in 30 years, but setting aside the hurricane and just how quickly all of that, that's the problem here, is how quickly all of the precipitation hits at once. That said, like I said, up until now,
that Hilary was coming.
They had
it would make landfall. They could have gotten people out of that area, but they didn't.
But they've also known that Southern California is going to get a lot of rain. That it happens. It's cyclical. 3 years ago, we were talking about the mudslides in Montecito, the mudslides in Thousand Oaks and in southern Ventura County, because they had so much. Mudslides come because there's a lot of rain.
Yeah.
So when all that rain comes, and every few years you've got a rainy season, you've got an El Nino.
Somebody gets buried under a house.
Then you get a reservoir, and you hold the water so that you keep that water for the drought that's inevitably going to come as well. But they just won't do it. And why? Because conservationists and EPA types won't let them. Number one,
it's not conservation. It's radical
environmentalists,
green
I should say. Yes,
activists.
Thank you. And number two, if they actually do something to solve the drought problem, they can't blame it on climate change.
That's right.
And there's nothing political about actually being good managers.
To have a profitable grievance culture, you need to not find solutions. And
LA County does have a ton of reservoirs. They were all built when they were building LA. It'd been the 40s, and people used to laugh. It's like, why would you move to LA? It's a desert. Well, they figured it out. They built reservoirs to hold the water. It's now one of the greatest agricultural miracles of the 20th century, but God forbid we follow those lessons learned in the past and do the same thing, because guess what? LA's a little bit more populous.
Yes.
Southern California has a lot more people than it did back in the 40s and 50s, so maybe as we get more people, we add more reservoirs. Nope.
You'd think.
Won't do it. They won't do it. And Gavin Newsom will blame Republicans. He wants to be your president. How did I turn this story about the hurricane into... because that's what they do.
That's right.
That's why they turn it into politics. And so will we. It's 6:15
News Talk 105.9
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock on this busy Wednesday morning. And am I talking too fast? I feel like I'm talking very fast.
Not at all.
I should slow down. I tend to talk fast. I get excited. I'm an excitable young man. The mayor of Los Angeles. Quick, what's the name of the mayor of Los Angeles?
I don't know.
Exactly. Karen Bass.
There you go.
Karen Bass ran and won on a social justice racial platform. She's the first black woman to be the mayor of Los Angeles, don't you know? You know how I know? Because
How do you know?
that's all anybody said
That's
after
right.
she won.
Yep.
Oh, what's she going to do? What's her plan? How's she going to fix L.A.? Well, she is the first black woman to be the mayor of Los Angeles. Oh, say no more.
She can do no wrong.
That tells me everything I need to know.
Yes.
She claimed she was going to fix homelessness. By the way, Democrats in California have claimed they were going to fix homelessness for 20 years now.
Right.
When Gavin Newsom ran to be mayor of San Francisco, he said, you give me 5 years and we'll fix homelessness in San Francisco. And boy, did he fix it ever, man. It couldn't be better there. So the criminal vagrant problem is still a mess. Karen Bass shows up on Face the Nation ostensibly to talk about the hurricane, right? But she was asked a question about, hey, remember when you ran as mayor, you were going to fix the homeless problem, right?
When we spoke to you last year, you said your first plan of action was to declare a state of emergency to tackle that homelessness. Why hasn't it made more of a difference?
Oh, well,
I love the chuckle.
Yeah. And also Margaret Sullivan with her once a year good question.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Why hasn't it made a difference?
Yeah.
By the way, why hasn't it made a difference already assumes that she's done something.
Right.
But it hasn't made a difference,
I take it
right?
back.
So instead, what have you done would actually be the first question
Yeah.
because here's what we see.
Oh, well, you were talking about a tremendous number of people. We did declare a state of emergency on my first day in office, and in my first 6 months, we housed 14,000 people. But it just shows you the magnitude of the problem.
It's almost like when we set up a big government, big spending program that, by the way, helps all the real estate developers who funded my campaign
yes.
because they're now getting, they're
Building,
building these
Whatever.
luxury $900,000 condos
Yes.
for a homeless person.
With 8 units that are affordable.
And the
right?
government is actually
Yes.
paying for it, so you don't have to worry about
Right.
missing rent checks or
Right,
anything.
right.
But when you do a really expensive government-funded program to give people free housing, you put them in that housing, and suddenly you've got more people.
Yeah.
It's almost like it becomes a magnet, attracting people to live in a free condo in L.A.
Yep.
without having to get a job and even without having to get off drugs or to get any mental health capacity. It's almost like we're telling the rest of the country, hey, come here and we'll put you up for free in a really expensive
Which actually
place.
they don't really have enough to house all of them. As I said, it's like they build the developer who gave to her campaign builds these enormous buildings, and there's like 8 units in the bottom off to the side that are affordable or given away for free. So yes, it acts as a magnet, but really they don't have these sort of free units for everyone. It's a lie.
I really do love the laugh, though. She certainly wasn't expecting
Well,
that.
yeah, you can hear you're going to ask me an actual question.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
What's the mayor of LA's response to her ineffectiveness against criminal vagrancy?
Why hasn't it made more of a difference?
Oh, well,
Oh dear.
LA Times, $11.5 million damage payout to former homeless hotel won't be used for repairs. Faced with reports of wrecked furniture, torn up carpet, and other types of damage, the city of Los Angeles recently paid $11.5 million to a boutique hotel used for 2 years as homeless housing. So what happened was, we talked about it because they tried to do it here in D.C. as well. During COVID, you had all these people living on the streets, criminal vagrants, and the mayor, Eric Garcetti, and the governor, Gavin Newsom, they had a bright idea. Hey, let's confiscate all these empty hotel rooms, force these criminal vagrants there who are living in their own filth in tents on the sidewalks right now. We'll put them in these, chic 4-star hotels so that they can get off the streets during the pandemic. And we said, gee, that's going to really ruin those hotels. I mean, look how they live. Look at what's going on here. They have mental health problems. They have drug addictions. They're criminals.
And many
they're
of them
prostitutes.
are not on the streets just because they can't find an apartment.
No, they're not. Turns out they did $11.5 million of damage to the Mayfair lofts. But here's the best part. The owner won't be obligated to use any of the $11.5 million in damage payouts to repaint rooms or replace light fixtures or fix other parts of the building. They can just take the money. The $11 million in damages that was already paid for, did they actually fix? Did they have to show receipts for the fixing the building?
Look.
Ask Council Member Bob Blumenfield, are we getting a building that has $11 million worth of damage? Because that's exactly what's happening. They're going to abandon the building, the owners, and they're going to take their $11 million.
To these owners, if I had to, for 2 years, live with a bunch of vagrants and drug addicts in my hotel, I'd take the money too. Because what are you going to do? Fix it up and be in the same city where the city leaders can again make you take in people like criminal vagrants and, drug users? I mean, I'm sorry, but in their defense, why not take the money and go and retire?
You remember about 9 or 10 minutes ago when I said pray for the people of Southern California because they're dealing with all the... Yeah, never mind. Don't waste it. They're getting exactly what they voted for. It's 6:23. Coming up, White House correspondent for Real Clear Politics, Phil Wegmann. Keep it here.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now. Now.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:36, and it's already a super busy Monday morning as we continue to cover the aftermath of the Maui fires. President Biden will be heading there, the aftermath of Hurricane Hilary in Southern California, plus the earthquake in Ohio. And, by the way, the president apparently had a fake email account as he was conducting business with his son when he was vice president.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that story. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGenova will be all over those and more. And then at 7:35, the CEO of Brave Books, those new children's books that the
Great company
left hates. So we'll talk to him. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Joining us right now is Phil Wegmann. Phil Wegmann covers the White House for Real Clear Politics. And boy, I'm guessing you're all over those stories. First, again, can we quickly, what are the plans for President Biden heading to Maui? Because, again, it's been pointed out, and I don't want to be too redundant here, but boy, oh boy, the coverage of Joe Biden's behavior during this tragedy compared to President Bush during Katrina, there seems to be a slight difference in how the White House press corps is covering it.
A slight difference. Certainly the president was pressed pretty hard on whether or not he was going to be on the island. That was the number one question that reporters had when it came to this disaster. Was the president going to show up in person, and was he going to do so in a way where he could bring comfort to those who have been through this disaster, but not distract from the rescue effort? So today he's going to be there. He's going to be there with the First Lady. And this was something that, previously the optics were pretty tough. I mean, we all remember that moment, last week where the president was returning from a beach vacation and reporters shouted, did he have any thing to say about what was going on in Maui at the moment? And the president stopped, he paused, he looked at reporters, and then he smiled and said no comment. So I think that they're looking for very different optics from this visit than from that moment.
Phil, and more recently, someone asked him specifically, when are you going to Maui? And he said, or tell us about your trip. And he said, no. And it was a very strange moment. And then turning away, that reporter actually thanked him, which is particularly galling. But what is this sort of temperature in the press room? I mean, is there any level of frustration? I just don't understand. I was on the ground in Katrina. I worked for the American Red Cross. I saw the hostility toward the president. I just cannot wrap my head around this double standard, and maybe I should get used to it by now. But can you sort of give me some sense of what it's like among the White House press corps and how they're sort of allowing this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think all of us were equally befuddled by those answers from the president, and certainly, when he is walking to the motorcade or Marine One, sometimes reporters are shouting questions. It's difficult for us to sometimes hear him. I imagine it's not the easiest thing in the world for him to hear us. And you kind of wanted to chalk this up to just a misunderstanding. But it is. I think it's fair to speculate that the media is a little bit more charitable to the president of one party than another. especially when it comes to natural disasters. But, the Biden administration, they don't want this to be a lingering headline. They don't want the president to continue to face any criticism that maybe he's not paying enough attention. And so, the president's going to be there. He sent the FEMA director there almost immediately. And I think that we'll get a better sense of his priorities after today's visit.
I mean, there are 1,000 people missing. 1,000 people.
But the last thing the White House wants is for this to be a political liability.
Right.
So I'm glad they're putting their priorities straight. The president has been in Lake Tahoe for his vacation from his vacation in Rehoboth, and Hunter Biden's been with him. And I wonder, Phil, it seems to me a pretty damning piece of evidence that the president, when he was vice president, had a pseudonym for emails, and he just so happened to use that pseudonym when emailing about issues involving Ukraine. And he copied his son, Hunter, and his son's partner, Devin Archer. They keep saying there's no smoking gun. That seems pretty obvious that you use a fake name when you're trying to hide something.
And if you go back and you look at the time period, it was interesting that Jay Carney, the then White House press secretary, was actually pressed on this practice back in the Obama administration. The Associated Press had discovered that cabinet members and other senior officials in the Obama administration had alternate email addresses. He said they're not secret email addresses. Instead, this is just necessary for these cabinet officials not to have their inboxes fill up with spam. But this is a little more interesting because you had the vice president using a couple pseudonyms that we know of. One of them is Robert L. Peters. And what I found fascinating was not just the use of pseudonyms, but like you mentioned, the emails that were being exchanged. And there are two emails from 2016, May and June of 2016, that Hunter Biden is CC'd on through his Rosemont Seneca email address, which is the email address associated with his consulting firm. And on those emails, it is the official run of show, much more than we get publicly. It's the sort of behind the scenes run of show for how President Biden on one day is preparing for his phone call with the Ukrainian president. On the next day, it's how he's preparing to welcome the Ukrainian prime minister to the West Wing. So these are minute by minute schedules. And it's curious, why did the president's son, who the White House continues to tell us anytime we bring up a question about Hunter Biden, they say that he's a private citizen.
Yeah.
So, well, if he's a private citizen, why did he have a minute by minute schedule about the goings on of Ukrainian officials when they were in contact with his father?
I love Phil Wegmann. It's curious. It's curious. Why he would do that. Yeah, it is curious. That's something I'm glad you have some curiosity about that, Phil. I'm curious as well. I wonder if we have any sort of, investigators who might be. I wonder if the FBI is curious.
Yes. Well, curiosity is a good thing in this case.
Phil Wegmann, thank you, sir. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you.
I so want to say love you.
I know. I'm trying really hard.
Love you.
Love you, Phil.
6. Well, it's on. You know that the 80s workout montage is happening right now with all of the Republican candidates as they prepare for Wednesday's debate.
The music.
That you will hear it live right here at 9 p.m. right after Mark Levin. We will cover the debate for your listening pleasure. And going into the weekend, there was still some question as to whether President Trump would arrive or not. There was a whole thing about the loyalty pledge, which is stupid, and I can't believe Ronna McDaniel put herself in this position.
I know.
Now we know for sure the answer to the question. President Trump will not be appearing on the debate stage because he'll be granting an exclusive interview to Tucker Carlson. We knew he was going to come up with some kind of counter-programming.
Of course, yeah.
And now we know what it is.
Yeah, but apparently he won't be doing any debates.
And then yesterday he decided, because a new poll came out that shows him way ahead, something like 60. But frankly, he's further ahead to his closest rival right now than Joe Biden is with Robert F. Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is actually polling better than any other Republican candidate for the nomination. So he said, the public knows who I am and what a successful presidency I had. I will therefore not be doing any of the debates. And we'll see.
There's an awful lot of folks who think that Trump hurt himself in the debate. I'm not sure about that. I think in many cases he proved that
in the 2016 debates.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. And so I don't know. It's interesting. You're not going to have those confefe moments or those viral videos. I just wonder what kind of advice he's gotten on this. Like, don't shoot yourself in the foot.
I think it's two-pronged. The first is it's three-pronged. It can only hurt you, number one, because what are you going to do?
Right.
Be ahead by 70 points next? I mean, he's already ahead. So why do it? It can only hurt you, number one. And number two, other side of that same coin, it can only help your opponents.
Yeah.
When somebody rises, basically you immediately elevate everybody else to your stature. And so why do that for them?
Right.
But then number three, I'm not going to lie. I'll be honest with you. And it's sad and it's horrible that this is the situation we're in. But I think the lawyers said it. Because
agree.
questions about the lawsuits will come up. Questions about his conduct on January 6th or questions about the classified documents, and literally anything he says on the debate can be used against him.
He has lately been, it's clear he's listening to his lawyers. He didn't release the Kraken. He canceled
that he
his
was going to do today.
Yes, that he was going to do today. And I suspect, and he actually said in his statement on Truth Social that he's listening to his lawyers. So I suspect this is part of that. And this is a disservice, frankly, to the voters. We should hear from our candidates.
It should be about and the disservice is not because of Trump deciding not to do it. It's because he's in this legal trouble.
Yes, by these ridiculous prosecutors.
Outrageous moves. So,
yes.
But that said, the debate goes on. It's still incredibly newsworthy.
Yeah.
And someone will emerge. A couple of people are going to have good nights. A couple of people, Asa Hutchinson, I think we won't see. But here's the most important thing. Two important things. You will hear it live here on WMAL at 9 p.m. And I'll be there. I'm going to be heading out there Wednesday right after the show. I'll be on the ground in Milwaukee, and Thursday morning.
You're going to make a beeline for Asa.
And I'm going to go right for Asa. I want that get. Is he even going to be there? I mean, he'll be there. I just don't think he'll be on the debate stage.
Larry's got Asa fever.
Thursday morning, our O'Connor and Company programming will originate from Milwaukee.
And yes, he's claimed that he has enough to get on the debate stage. Yes.
Has he? Well, there you go. It's 6:52, and I want to tell you, if you need a new roof, there's only one phone call to make. That makes it easy. You want to call New Look Home Design. And if you need new siding,